Thank you all for joining us today. This is our practice management call here at Visible and National Trust. We do these monthly, and we are very excited to do that. Today, we have a special guest with us, Laura Giogani from Vanilla, and we're going to ask her to talk a little bit about her story and tell us the Vanilla story as well. Before we do that, I'm going to introduce myself and one of my colleagues here at Visible, who's also with us today. And that is Eric Jorgensen, and Eric's picture will come on in just a minute, I'm sure. There he is. So I'm the founder and CEO of Visible National Trust. And our whole reason for being and our goal is to change the special needs trust experience for families and for advisors. We understand that about 10% of families across the country are likely to need a special needs trust at some point. And so our whole reason for being is to make sure that the experience of doing that is as simple and as positive as it possibly can be. Laura Giogani, who is, hi Laura, is with us today, is the Director of High Net Worth and Family Office Sales at Vanilla. And philosophically, Visible and Vanilla share some important ideas about, and their whole world is about making estate planning simple for financial advisors. So that is a huge link between the thinking in the two organizations. I am super excited to have Laura with us today because of that important link in philosophy between the two organizations. Trusts as we know them date back to the 12th century. Which is a very long time ago. It is fair to say that the evolution of trusts and how they work for people, for actually the end user of the trust, evolution of the world of trust has not been particularly notable. There's lots of paper, there's very little automation, very challenging often to translate trusts into kind of plain English, so that they're understandable for people. And they've very much been the province of, even though they affect lots of humans and users, it's very much the province of attorneys who are very well versed in what trusts say and are all about. And they're a lot more opaque for the rest of us. And there's really a broader opportunity here that companies like Vanilla have realized and Visible to kind of transform trust and make them more accessible and understandable and transparent. We do that with a very specific type of trust, a special needs trust that we know about 10 in every 100 advisor clients is likely to need. So any firm that has the ETFs that we use to invest beneficiary assets on their platform can set up a special needs trust with us and keep the investments on the firm's own platform. Otherwise, we operate kind of like a donor advised fund. And I'm going to turn this over and start to ask Laura some questions. Vanilla does all of this by taking the trust paperwork and kind of transforming it into modern visual estate planning for every client. So what I'd love to ask you, Laura, is if you could start with a little bit about you, how you got to Visible and your background. I got to Vanilla rather, and your background. Sorry.
All good.
Yeah, and then you can talk about kind of the philosophy and what the company's all about and what you're trying to solve for. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me, Lisa, Eric. My background, I was at the JP Morgan Private Bank for my career until I kind of found Vanilla, and now I work here. And what I did there, similar to a lot of the backgrounds of people on this call, I'm sure, in the advisory world, in the private banking world, a huge differentiator, what you can bring to a family that they don't tend to get elsewhere, is transparency on how their estate plan is working, right? So putting together things like an estate disposition analysis to make sure the estate plan dictates correctly what the financial plan should be doing, which dictates then what the heirs get, how they get it, if it all is flowing together. And it does start with the estate plan. So of course, we put things together and it was just very manual. It took a lot of time. You put things in PowerPoint, Excel, kind of mesh the two together. And that is actually one of the biggest pain points that Vanilla solves for. As a company, the philosophy and why we started was, let's create a platform where the organization, the visualization, and the analysis of someone's estate plan becomes a lot more automated, a lot easier for a end client to actually understand and digest, rather than, the advisor, the attorney kind of going back and forth, going over the client's head the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's right, like that's why we're the company that we are. Over time, what we've built, so we kind of started in that space of being able to work with like family office type clients, solving for a ton of complexity and showing how the estate plan works, how the taxes work, et cetera. And now we've kind of moved all the way through just even like basic trust creation on like the pour over will revocable trust side. So that's a little bit of my background. And again, Vanilla
That's
has
great.
set out on this mission to be a complete end-to-end estate planning platform with a key vision of how can we help advisors be equipped with a tool to make their clients understand and really feel like they have a part in building their overall legacy.
That is very, very cool. So let me ask you a question. I love to ask this question in general because advisors always have a laundry list of things that they would, like to see happen that would make their lives easier. So in your travels with Vanilla, what do you hear about the most in terms of like, how does the concept of visible translate to, like, what is the practical problem advisors are having? Is it literally explaining all of this planning that's in place? Is it showing it to them? Is it a combination of both? What are they trying to solve for?
Yeah. So it's actually, it's both. And it kind of does depend on the firm or right? Because it depends on the overall expertise within the firm around how to talk about and navigate the trusts and the trust language. Some firms have in-house estate attorneys, some do not. So what I see is one of two things typically. One is, we have all this in-house expertise to help communicate this stuff with our clients. But the amount of time it takes to put together a really static report and then have to go back and take again hours and hours to update that once new trust documents are created, we make changes. And again, let's put together a big PowerPoint and help present it. The thought process is there, like that's a great way to approach it. It's just that the mechanism of getting there through like PowerPoint, Excel, whatever, takes a long time and it's not really sustainable. So
Yeah.
having everything live in one place where you upload estate plan documents, kind of match it together with the financial data and keep everything super organized on one big platform, that is where Vanilla fits in for some of those firms. On the other side, you see firms that want to offer this to their end clients, but again, they're like, I'm not an attorney. I don't really want to read through trust documents, nor do I feel super comfortable. Well, they don't have the time to do that. And also maybe I don't feel super comfortable being the one to like spell this whole thing out and present it. Which is where Vanilla's also been able to come in. So from the organization perspective, yeah, it's great, but there's a level of services at Vanilla where we actually in-house, we have a team of former practicing trust and estate attorneys and paralegals whose job it is to act as like the outsourced estate specialist for a firm who's looking to level up what they're doing on the estate planning side. Don't want to hire someone in-house to be that person to do it and create the PDFs. Rather, they can lean on Vanilla to do that. So there's a bunch of different use cases. And I think the overarching theme there is we've built a platform that can meet advisors wherever they are in let's say their expertise level or their resourcing level when it comes to wanting to provide more resources in the trust creation or trust like review space.
Yep. Yep. So that's great. That is super helpful and clarifying. One of the things, and I'm very curious if this is something that you guys experience at Vanilla as well, is we work with a lot of families and advisors who, um, one of the things that's challenging with trust is to translate the document into kind of real life. So you have this natural disconnect where you work with an attorney and they write you a fantastic trust document, and then actually making that come alive, and how do I work with it, and where does it go, and is there a bank attached to it or an investment, all of the mechanics of that. um, Most consumers, regardless of balance, how many zeros in their bank accounts, that's not information most people have access to, unless they're in the business. Um, and so that's been a thing that's been really, we find ourselves very constantly explaining that, how all the mechanics work. Is that something you guys feel like you hear a lot about as well? And you're smiling, so I'm going to guess yes.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I was
yeah,
actually going to see if this will let me share. Am I able to share my screen?
I can.
Here, I think I got it, if that's okay.
Yeah, you're good. You're already
Oh,
good.
good. I mean, what you're saying is, I mean, yes, that's right up our alley. And being able to, this is an advisor platform, right? So if I'm an advisor and I'm saying to a client, hey, you have 600 pages of black and white trust documents on a shelf somewhere, and it would really help me as the advisor to do my job to understand what all those say. And I'm sure you would really like it too, just to make
Right.
sure your ex-husband's not on your documents anymore and your kids are getting what they need to get. And are the provisions in that special needs trust that you made so long ago, do they still align with the services that your child or whoever might actually need? We don't know, but we should probably take a look at that. So being able to house all of the estate documents in one place. But then, so this is where there's a few different ways this can happen in vanilla, whether it's using our team of those in-house attorneys, whether it's using a mixture of AI and a tool that we provide to advisors. But the game changer here is that we'll actually take documents, turn them into diagrams, so that when you are having that conversation about like, I'm lost, here's a big stack of documents, what's happening and how are people getting assets? Pulling out all of the key provisions for each trust type, each sub-trust, seeing who those fiduciaries are. Does that still align with who I want to have powers on things? Even being able to look at a full family tree,
Mhm.
sit down with a client and help them understand or show them, yeah, I get it. I know your whole family structure. Um, is this, is there any more grandchildren? Does Elizabeth have any more kids? And how's this one doing and that one? And sometimes pulling up a simple family tree helps a conversation in a way you'd never even imagine. It's like, oh, I forgot to tell you about this huge thing that happened with this one child. And you know what? Maybe it is time for us to set up a certain type of trust because that child's going to need different provisions than someone else. So
Back.
being able to take this information along with this whole estate plan diagram,
Yep.
and then of course with the financial data, it allows you to see things in so many different ways. If a simple beneficiary summary, who's getting what, how are they getting it, a fiduciary summary, like let's go through again and make sure the right people have powers in the right places. Or, and this is a little bit more numbers on this page, but a waterfall summary of now that we have the assets and the estate plan in one place, how can I show you your assets flowing based on the estate plan that you have? So
Yep.
similarly, who gets what? How do they get it? Is it going out right? Is it remaining in trust? But at the end of the day, does this all sit well with you in terms of what charity's getting versus the kids versus your nieces and nephews versus even estate taxes?
Yep. Yep.
I'll
Yeah.
stop sharing, but that's my long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's it. That's a great explanation. And I mean, that's a thing we talk about all the time with families and with advisors about, there are a lot of misconceptions about whether, what can happen to leftover money in a special needs trust, depending on who put the money in. The money can, in fact, any leftover funds can actually come back to the family or does other designated remainder beneficiaries. And so I love that. And so we say that, um, but seeing the visual of it, I think kind of, kind of helps make the point that this information is just, not as readily available. And I love the way that really clarifies it.
And Lisa, I
Uh,
will tell you, like, the amount of advisors that work with us looking for basic documents, Vanilla can help there with, again, the pour over will, the revocable trust, and the ancillary stuff. But so often we are asked about special needs trusts. And I would, I would love to just hear a little bit more from you too about where special needs trust and how you guys work with advisors really fits in here, because I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've even suggested Visible, but we get the question so much. You are so much in the space that I know you're hearing it all the time as well.
Right.
But for anyone from the vanilla side or advisors who are listening to this, just getting a recap also on like what that process looks like to actually get that done.
Yeah, so the history of special needs trusts is definitely doesn't go all the way back to the 12th century, but in in recent times, it's been a pretty complicated and expensive process for families. Typically, the idea has been to create a trust document and then fund it much later. So there's often a multi-decade lag time. And that can be to the point you made about, are those the fiduciaries you still want in your doing your work? That happens a lot to families, is that they'll find that designations they've made about people's roles in the trust change over decades, of course. So we're kind of a totally different model, where you come to Visible, we have our documents already in place, just like you guys do. We have trust documents. And the process looks much more like setting up a trust account, which is very similar to setting up a brokerage account or any other kind of financial account. We have all the services related to trustee and trust administration work here at Visible. So it's an end-to-end, we're an end-to-end solution. And so families come to us, or advisors, or they come together, and our process is super simple. We do have a process up front where we ask a lot of questions. Eric leads that effort for us. And so we have to understand what's happening with really everything that's going on with the family and the person with the disability. We will document any benefits that exist. We will try to support the process of accessing additional benefits. The economics of disability benefits are super significant, and they can add up in the aggregate to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So even if you've got a quite sizable balance sheet, though the economic value of benefits can still be really super important. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to kind of everything that's out there, so that they can use the money that they're putting into the trust really to serve the beneficiaries' needs. And so from there, once the account is set up and it's funded, we can start distributing money to support the beneficiary. And it's as simple as sending in a distribution. Like with any trust, the trustee is the one who says, gives the okay on the distribution. We have to do the same thing. We also do a quick double check in terms of any benefits that are in place, just to make sure we're following all the rules on behalf of our beneficiaries. And that's the whole process. So information about market values of the trusts, that's information we can share with advisors as well. So one of the important differences with Visible is our goal really was to make this a financial product. So our partners are BlackRock on the investment side. We work with Huntington National Bank, not just to get tickets for football games at their new stadium deal, but also because they're specialists in this area. So that, this is just a best-in-class solution. And the information flows freely and is available to everybody who's working with it, so that organizations like Vanilla can literally take our trust document and do the same thing, map it out, which is great. It's the way of the world. But it hasn't been like that for special needs trusts. They've been a little bit of an offshoot. of the trust and estate world, even though so many people, to your point, need them and ask about them.
Mm.
And it's also been a little bit of a just kind of a do-it-yourself the thing that's happened in the industry as well, in special needs trusts, where families have gotten together. Some very large nonprofit organizations are make trust services available. Our view is that that's all wonderful, but the reality is this is a financial product. It's a legal and financial product, and needs to be brought to market by financial services firms who are part of the whole governance and regulatory structure, and also part of the operational financial services system, so that people can see their special needs trusts as part of their larger portfolios, and really understand the flow of funds into the trusts and distributions, and how remainders will be handled. So we've taken a very different approach, which is why we started a new company to do this.
Yeah. My favorite thing about even being a part of this whole industry, and what I like just love about what you're doing and what Vanilla's doing, even in my professional career so far, I've just seen how information has been so gated up in terms of like all the trust and estate information, where the documents live, who has access to what, just the overall like unknowing. Like people don't know what they don't know because maybe it's being kept not on purpose, but like it's just not super organized. There's never been a lot of good software around it.
Right.
And what's happening is like this whole world is getting like demystified in a way where it's,
Exactly.
you should have full reins on what you know and don't know about certain trusts, have full reins on what's happening. You have at least the information to be making the decisions, rather than hoping they're being made or just kind of putting them off and forgetting about it, which, um, it's just been very cool to be a part of an industry that's changing so quickly and keeping up with it and watching it change. And at the end of the day, yes, we're all running businesses here, but at the end of the day, these are businesses that have an impact on families. I mean, you can even speak from yourself, like families, and the way that advisors can bring peace of mind to a family in a way that maybe they weren't able to before. And I feel like that's half of an advisor's job these days. It's like being a therapist, bringing peace of mind, helping someone sleep at night because they know what they need to know. And that's what these things are doing. And I just think it's so incredible.
I feel the same way, and I'd love, Eric, please share your thoughts about this too. But we had a client meeting recently, and with special needs trust, there's often, of course, a family story. There's someone who has a disability, or we wouldn't be having the conversation, right? And so it can be very emotional. And our client, one of the family members, said, it's not a special needs conversation unless somebody cries. And and that's really true. So given the kinds of trust that we work with, we're often having a lot of very emotional conversations with people, because it's not really just about the money or the flow of funds. It's about caring for someone who really needs it, and in a very specific kind of way.
I'll say, as a former financial advisor, having a tool like Vanilla would have been amazing. Went back when I was a practicing advisor, because families would say, well, I have this estate plan and I got done 5-6 years ago. I really don't know what it does. I don't know how it works. I don't know what's in it. And then you start talking about multi-generational planning, where grandma and grandpa want to help, but they want to give equal to all grandchildren. But maybe there's paternal and maternal, right? So now you've got some dynamics going on. Maybe one side of the family can do more or whatever, and just having that visual representation of saying, well, this is who really needs it for this isn't fun stuff, right? So maybe you give it to the colleges over here, and then we we fund the trust here. But having that visual, to your point about that family tree, and just being able to say, okay, Tim, you're doing this much this year, and then the advisor can the advisor, in my mind, I see the advisor using that tool saying, and then every year when they're doing their annual review saying, okay, Tim, Dorothy, this is what you said you wanted to commit to for your plan. And are we tracking? And have you talked to your parents? Are they tracking? And just use that as a, not really accountability. I mean, accountability, sure, but more of to keep everybody on the same page. Because when you're doing those reviews, it's so easy to get derailed.
Yeah.
And have a visual up there that everybody's tracking with. And it makes it accessible because I'll tell you, when I was an advisor, I would say 80% of the time, one of the spouses wasn't engaged, not actively.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of numbers and spreadsheets and putting a picture up where you show where everything's going and you visualize it all. I love it. And I love the fact that you have that the tax projections, because then you can start showing those scenarios. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I can. And one thing I'll just say, Eric, as well, like, yeah, the family tree is great. It's actually the most printed page in vanilla. And that doesn't surprise me. And while I think it's kind of funny, it just doesn't surprise me because I used to make family trees on like paper and, but I think they're great. The other thing that is always changing, right? Family dynamics are always changing. So putting up a family tree every meeting and learning something new about the family, a new baby, a new whatever's happening, that's great. Same thing goes for like the list of fiduciaries. So that fiduciaries page I pulled up, almost every time, I bet you could pull up, especially when there's a few different trusts in play,
Yeah.
bunch of ancillaries as well. Pull up that fiduciary page, go through the lineage of who has powers on what is their role, how old is this document? And maybe each and every time you would learn, oh, you know what? As of 2 weeks ago, my brother's selling his company. He's so busy. He's not gonna, he shouldn't be the primary trustee on this. If something happens, he actually won't be able to take care of it. So then you learn something about the family. You help them make changes where changes are needed. Such a win-win situation. You asked about taxes. So vanilla, we calculate all state, federal, non-resident state estate taxes. We also calculate GST taxes. And then we also track GST exemption that's been used and how much federal estate tax exemption has been used as well. One thing that's great, so estate tax, especially on the federal level, has been a conversation for ultra high net worth individuals.
Right.
And that's, been also a tool that can help with ultra high net worth individuals. However, this is becoming more and more important for anyone with an estate plan, anyone with a bank account, especially kind of when you're looking at what might happen in 2026, what likely will happen with with the exemption sunsetting. We do have it baked into the platform that on 1/1/26, the exemption sunsets to 7.27 per person, 2 million per person, and then is indexed inflation from there. So what you can do from a projection perspective, maybe I should just share my screen again, actually, is use the platform to take a holistic look at all of the transfer taxes. So if you turn on the projections and you look at a year of death, split year of death in the future, maybe you're growing the estate at a certain rate or different asset classes. Even being able to toggle with the amount of exemption a client has used and what their state of residence is. Of course, if you're trying to tell someone, yeah, move from Illinois and go to Florida because here's what you'll save. That's what you'll do here, Maryland. But what I'm looking at, and this is a very large estate, so it's a different story when you're looking at someone who's not taxable today, but very well could be in the future. We're seeing what's going out to the state estate taxes, what's going out to charity, how much is left that would be subject to federal estate taxes. That's all in today's dollars. And then let's see what that may look like in the future, especially given what we call out here with the exemption sunsetting. And I think it's just nice to get a good snapshot in your head of, there's charities, there's my beneficiaries, and there's taxes. What's going where today? What's going where at some point in the future? And this tends to be a helpful conversation.
No, I appreciate that because 2026 isn't that far away. It's really not. I mean, and especially when we're talking about estate planning for, you don't want to be going in and making last minute changes. So I really appreciate that.
That's awesome. And
I don't
that
think you
is-
can go way to make last minute changes at this point. Oh,
Right.
sorry if I'm lagging.
Because what it
Right? Like,
is-
it's get with the attorney now or wait a long time.
So one of the things that struck me that to your point about the family tree, a lot of people are, often what we encourage families to do is really think about, you have, for your typically developed kids, you've got, a family of, the stats are something like 1 out of 7 people have a disability, right? So if you've got 10 kids, you're setting up trusts for, you may very well not want to set up a kind of a standard wealth transfer trust tool, whatever that maps to in your particular state. You may want to set up a special needs trust for, as you think through the whole estate planning. And I love the idea of really being able to show that. We talk to grandparents pretty frequently who are at that point, and they're thinking about, they want to leave money to multiple kids, multiple grandchildren, but not everybody has the same needs. And so how do they deal with that? And we talk a lot about the idea that you can, in the same way that you're thinking about leaving, X dollars or interests in companies, or however it is that you're organizing the wealth transfer, that for your special needs loved one, your disabled loved one, putting assets in the special needs trust is, you literally just plug it in to the bigger picture plan, as just a different kind of trust, so that you have a trustee in place who knows how to support your loved one with disabilities over time, and that those needs, they really are very different, and they need to be supported and differently and with a different kind of trust. And so I really love the idea of just being able to show people a visual of, grandma, grandpa, mom and dad, and multiple kids. And, here's where you put the special needs trust, and just making it, for every family that has a loved one with a disability, it really should be part of the thought process. To your point about taxes, this is what I love to tell people is that, this is not about taxes. This is about people. Special needs trusts, not known for their tax benefits, but certainly you do it because you need to take care of somebody that you love who has a disability over the course of their life. So I'm noticing that we are just about at time. And Eric, do you have any other questions for Laura? And Laura, do you have any other questions for us before we wrap up and say thank you to everybody?
Laura, I'll let you go last. I would just want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna put this on our YouTube channel so people have a link to your website. But do you mind sharing how people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely, yes. If anyone's looking to learn more about vanilla kind of on a basic level before engaging in a conversation with me or my team, our website is justvanilla.com, JUSTVANILLA.com. And I think my information might be, I don't know if you have it or could post it, Eric, but my email is my first name, Laura, my last name, Jogani, at justvanilla.com. Of course, anyone can find me on LinkedIn as well. And there's a way to get in touch with Vanilla's entire sales team through our website as well. So there's a few different options. Thanks for posting in there, Lisa.
That's great. So Eric, did you have something else that you wanted to talk about? No? Okay, great. So I would just, so people can get in touch with Visible National Trust at visiblenationaltrust.com. And just call, you can book appointments there, and you've got all sorts of good stuff going on. So we're very easy to find. Just Google Visible National Trust, boom, we come right up. And absolutely feel free to reach out to either Eric or myself directly. I think, the theme that and part of the reason why we started Visible is because we just saw the need for this legacy business, trusts and estates, really being ripe for transformation. And it is really exciting to see that starting to play out in terms of actual businesses and services that people can access at a really practical level. we're one of those, and you guys at Vanilla are certainly one of those. And it's just great to be able to be part of an industry that's changing, and really morphing and making things better, I think, for families, for investors, and for anybody who needs to use, an idea that started back centuries and centuries ago in its modern, new format, the way we're all doing it.
Absolutely. It's really, as I mentioned, it's great to see how far this industry's come, and I'm excited to see how it just continues to evolve and transform the space. So thank you both so much for having me on today. It's always a pleasure talking with you, especially on a topic that I just think is, incredibly important.
Yep, absolutely. And likewise, a pleasure having you, and we'll look forward to further conversations.
Absolutely. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day.